The text message glowed on Avery's phone like a neon sign in the darkness of their bedroom. Tonight was incredible. Can't wait to see you again tomorrow. Jasper Holloway stood frozen in the doorway, his coffee mug trembling in his hand as the numbers on the clock read 11:47 p.m. His wife of 8 years lay sleeping peacefully beside the phone. Her auburn hair spilled across the pillow like spilled wine on white linen. The mug slipped from his fingers, shattering against the hardwood floor with a sound that seemed to echo through his entire world. Avery stirred, her green eyes fluttering open. Jasper? What happened? He stared at her. This woman he'd built a life with, bought a house with, shared dreams with. The woman who'd stood beside him at his father's funeral just 6 months ago, holding his hand as dirt was thrown onto the casket. The woman who'd laughed at his terrible jokes and cried during romantic movies and made him feel like the luckiest man alive. Your phone, he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. She glanced at the device, and he watched as the color drained from her face. For a split second, guilt flickered across her features before being replaced by something harder, more defensive. It's not what you think, she said, sitting up and pulling the sheet around her chest. Then explain it to me. Jasper's voice remained calm, methodical. Even in this moment of earth-shattering discovery, his analytical mind kicked into gear. Explain to me why someone is texting my wife at midnight about how incredible their time together was. Avery's jaw tightened. It's complicated. Complicated. He repeated the word slowly, tasting its bitterness. 8 years of marriage, and it's complicated. She swung her legs out of bed, her movements sharp and defensive. You don't understand the pressure I'm under, Jasper. The business, the stress, everything we've been dealing with. I needed someone to talk to. Someone to talk to. Another repetition, another nail in the coffin of their marriage. At midnight, about how incredible it was. It's not physical, she said, but her eyes couldn't meet his. Jasper nodded slowly, his mind already cataloging inconsistencies, analyzing her body language, processing the information like the forensic accountant he was. Details were his specialty. Numbers didn't lie, and neither did behavior patterns. What's his name? Avery hesitated. Harlan Voss. The name hit him like a physical blow. Harlan Voss. He'd heard it before, whispered in conversations that stopped when he entered rooms, mentioned casually in ways that now seemed anything but casual. From your yoga studio, Jasper said. It wasn't a question. She nodded reluctantly. How long? Jasper, please. How long, Avery? 3 months. 3 months. While he'd been working 60-hour weeks to pay for their mortgage, their cars, her boutique consulting business, while he'd been bringing her coffee in bed every morning and asking about her day every evening, while he'd been planning their anniversary trip to Tuscany. I need some air, he said, walking toward the door. Where are you going? He paused at the threshold, looking back at the woman who just destroyed everything he thought he knew about his life. I don't know yet. The hotel room smelled like industrial disinfectant and broken dreams. Jasper sat on the edge of the bed, staring at his laptop screen as spreadsheets of their financial accounts glowed in the darkness. Numbers had always made sense to him in ways that people didn't. Numbers were honest. He'd discovered the expensive watch first, a Rolex Submariner worth $8,000, hidden in Avery's jewelry box behind her grandmother's pearls. Then came the credit card statements he'd never seen, the ones that arrived at her office instead of their home, dinners at restaurants they'd never been to together, hotel charges in the city when she'd claimed to be working late. The evidence painted a picture more detailed than any confession ever could. His phone buzzed. Avery again, the 5th call in 2 hours. He let it go to voicemail and opened a new browser tab, typing in the name that now felt like poison in his mind. Harlan Voss. Social media profiles revealed a man in his early 40s, divorced, with the kind of practiced smile that probably charmed yoga studios and coffee shops across the city, a freelance marketing consultant with a taste for expensive watches and weekend trips to wine country. Jasper's phone buzzed with a text. Please come home. We can work this out. He set the phone aside and continued his research. Harlan Voss had been married twice. The first divorce involved allegations of financial impropriety. The second ended when his wife discovered he'd been siphoning money from her business accounts. A pattern emerged, clear as the spreadsheets Jasper analyzed for a living. 3 days later, Jasper sat across from Vaughn Reed in a coffee shop downtown, watching steam rise from his untouched latte. The private investigator looked exactly like central casting would order. Weathered face, knowing eyes, the kind of man who'd seen enough human nature to surprise no one. Your wife's been seeing him for 4 months, not 3, Vaughn said, sliding a manila envelope across the table. She lied about the timeline. Jasper opened the envelope, revealing photographs that confirmed what he'd already known but hadn't wanted to believe. Avery and Harlan entering hotels, kissing in restaurant parking lots, shopping together for the watch that had started this investigation. There's more, Vaughn continued. Voss has a history. 2 previous relationships where he isolated married women, convinced them to leave their husbands, then cleaned out their assets before disappearing. He's a professional, Jasper said, studying a photograph of Avery laughing at something Harlan was saying. Looks that way. Your wife matches his typical target profile. Successful, financially stable, emotionally vulnerable. Vulnerable? The business troubles she mentioned. Her consulting firm is hemorrhaging money. Has been for 6 months. She's been hiding it from you. Jasper set down the photographs. Another lie, another betrayal. The woman he'd married was disappearing piece by piece, revealed to be someone he'd never really known. What do you want me to do? Vaughn asked. Find out everything, Jasper said quietly. Every detail of their relationship, every financial transaction, every lie she's told. I want to know exactly who my wife has become. The confrontation with Harlan happened on a Thursday evening at Murphy's Tavern, a dimly lit bar where accountability went to die. Jasper had waited 3 hours, nursing the same beer and watching the door like a hawk watches field mice. Harlan entered at 9:15 p.m., scanning the room with the casual confidence of a man who believed the world owed him something. He was taller than the photographs suggested, with silver threading through dark hair and the kind of expensive casual wear that whispered rather than shouted. Harlan Voss, Jasper said as the man approached the bar. Harlan turned, his face cycling through confusion, recognition, and something approaching fear. You must be the husband. I must be. Jasper gestured to the empty stool beside him. Drink? I think I'll stand. Suit yourself. Jasper took a sip of his beer, his movements deliberate and calm. Nice watch. Harlan's hand moved reflexively to his wrist, where the submariner caught the bar's amber light. Looks expensive, Jasper continued. Must have cost someone a lot. Look, I don't want any trouble. Neither did I. Jasper's voice remained conversational, friendly even. But here we are. Harlan shifted his weight, glancing toward the exit. Whatever Avery told you? Avery didn't tell me anything useful. That's not really her strong suit anymore, is it? Telling the truth? The silence stretched between them like a taut wire. She's leaving you, Harlan said finally, his voice gaining confidence. She deserves better than what you've been giving her. Jasper nodded thoughtfully. You know what's interesting about patterns, Harlan? They repeat. Married women, financial access, sudden disappearances. You've got quite a track record. The color drained from Harlan's face. Rebecca Martinez in San Diego convinced her to divorce her husband and invest her settlement in your marketing firm. Vanished 3 weeks later with $200,000. Jasper's voice never rose above a conversational level. Then there was Sarah Chen in Portland. Similar story, though you only got away with $60,000 that time. Harlan took a step backward. I don't know what you're talking about. Of course you don't. Jasper finished his beer and set the empty bottle on the bar with deliberate precision. Here's what's going to happen, Harlan. You're going to walk away from my wife. Tonight. No contact, no messages, no accidental encounters at the yoga studio. You can't threaten me? I'm not threatening you. Jasper turned to face him fully for the first time, and something in his eyes made Harlan take another step back. I'm informing you, because if you don't walk away, I'm going to make sure every potential victim in this city knows exactly who you are and what you do, starting with your current employer. Harlan's face had gone pale. You can't prove anything. I don't have to prove anything. I just have to ask the right questions to the right people. Create enough doubt. You know how this works, Harlan. Reputation is everything in your line of work. Without another word, Jasper left $20 on the bar and walked toward the exit, leaving Harlan standing alone under the tavern's dim lights. The call came 2 days later, while Jasper was reviewing quarterly reports in his temporary apartment across town. Vaughn's voice carried a note of satisfaction. Voss just got suspended from his consulting contract. Apparently, someone sent his employer some very detailed information about his background. Interesting, Jasper said, though he felt no satisfaction. Only a hollow sense of pieces moving on a board. Gets better. Your wife showed up at his apartment yesterday evening. Neighbors reported loud voices, crying, the whole drama. He didn't let her in. The image of Avery standing outside Harlan's door, finally understanding the game she'd been playing, should have brought Jasper some sense of justice. Instead, it only deepened the emptiness that had taken root in his chest. There's something else, Vaughn continued. She's been calling you. A lot. Jasper's phone showed 37 missed calls, each one a failed attempt to undo what couldn't be undone. He'd listened to none of the voicemails. She'll escalate, Jasper said. She's lost control of the situation, and she'll try to regain it. What do you want to do? Jasper stared out the window at a city that suddenly felt foreign, full of strangers living lives built on lies and half-truths. We wait. She'll make the next move. The next move came in the form of Elena Morrison, their mutual friend and the closest thing Avery had to a sister. Elena appeared at Jasper's office on Friday afternoon, her designer handbag clutched like a weapon and her usually perfect composure cracked around the edges. "You need to talk to Avery," she said without preamble, settling into the chair across from his desk. "No, I don't." "She's falling apart, Jasper. She made a mistake, but destroying her isn't going to fix your marriage." Jasper continued reviewing the contract in front of him, his pen moving steadily across the pages. "I'm not destroying anything. I'm simply removing myself from a situation that became untenable. Don't give me that corporate speak. This is your wife we're talking about." "Is it?" He looked up at Elena for the first time. "Because the woman I married wouldn't have spent 4 months lying to my face while sleeping with another man. The woman I married wouldn't have hidden financial problems that could have bankrupted us both. So no, Elena, I don't think we're talking about my wife. We're talking about a stranger who happens to share her name." Elena's composure cracked further. "She loves you." "No," Jasper said quietly. "She loved the security I provided. The house, the cars, the lifestyle. She loved the idea of me, not the reality." "That's not fair." "Fair?" Jasper's voice finally carried an edge. "Was it fair when she was choosing restaurants with him while I was working late to pay for our mortgage? Was it fair when she was accepting expensive gifts while I was eating dinner alone because she claimed to be working? Don't talk to me about fair, Elena. She wants to make it right. There is no making this right. There's only what happens next." Elena leaned forward, desperation creeping into her voice. "What do you want from her? Groveling? Public humiliation? What would it take?" Jasper set down his pen and looked at Elena with the same calm intensity he'd shown Harlan at the bar. "I want her to leave me alone. I want her to stop calling, stop sending mutual friends to plead her case, and stop pretending that what she did was a mistake instead of a choice. 4 months of choices, Elena. Hundreds of individual decisions to betray everything we built together. And then what? You just walk away from 8 years? I walked away from 8 years the moment I found that text message. Everything since then has just been cleanup." 3 days later, the counterattack began. Jasper arrived at his office Monday morning to find his assistant, Janet, fielding calls from reporters. Apparently, someone had provided them with a very detailed story about his alleged infidelity, complete with fabricated evidence and carefully constructed lies. "Channel 7 called twice," Janet said, her face flushed with embarrassment. "That they're asking about photos of you with some woman at the Riverside Hotel?" Jasper felt something cold and sharp settle in his stomach. The photographs existed. He'd seen them in Vaughn's reports. But they weren't of him with another woman. They were of Avery and Harlan, digitally altered with impressive skill. His phone buzzed with a text from his brother. "What the hell is going on?" Mom's asking questions. Then another from his college roommate. "Dude, Channel 7 just ran a story about you. Call me." The scope of Avery's counterattack became clear over the next few hours. She'd contacted their mutual friends, their families, his colleagues. She'd spun a narrative of marital neglect, emotional abandonment, and his alleged affair with a fictional woman named Rebecca Thorne. The sophistication of the lies impressed him in a perverse way. She'd created email accounts, fabricated text message threads, even produced receipts for fictional romantic dinners. It was the kind of comprehensive deception that required planning, patience, and a complete abandonment of moral boundaries. Jasper sat in his office as the afternoon wore on, watching his carefully constructed life unravel in real time. Colleagues avoided eye contact. His phone rang constantly with calls from reporters, family members, and friends demanding explanations for crimes he'd never committed. At 6 p.m., he called Vaughn. "She's good," the investigator admitted. "Better than I expected. The digital manipulation alone required professional help. Can you prove it's fabricated?" "Give me time." "Digital forensics aren't my specialty, but I have contacts. The question is whether you want to go that route." Jasper stared out his office window at the city lights beginning to twinkle in the gathering darkness. "What's the alternative?" "You could let it run its course. Public attention spans are short. This story will be replaced by something else within a week. And my reputation? Damaged, but not destroyed. You're not a public figure. People forget." But Jasper was thinking beyond public perception. Avery had escalated to psychological warfare, and she'd demonstrated a capacity for destruction that he'd never suspected. The woman who'd cried during romantic movies had orchestrated a campaign of character assassination with surgical precision. "No," he said finally. She wants to play at this level, we play at this level. Find me everything, the digital trail, the professional help she hired, the whole network. I want to know exactly how she built this lie. Jasper, Vaughn's voice carried a note of warning. Once you go down this path, there's no coming back. You sure you want to escalate? Jasper thought about the 8 years of marriage that had revealed themselves to be built on quicksand. He thought about the friends who'd believed Avery's lies without question, the family members who'd called demanding explanations, the colleagues who now looked at him with suspicion. She already escalated, he said. I'm just responding in kind. The investigation into Avery's counterattack revealed a level of planning that bordered on the professional. She'd hired a digital marketing specialist to create the fabricated evidence, paid a private investigator of her own to research Jasper's daily routines, and coordinated the media campaign with the precision of a political operative. The irony wasn't lost on Jasper that his wife had used the same methodical approach that had always defined his own work. She'd studied him, analyzed his weaknesses, and struck with calculated efficiency. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated his capacity for patience. While Avery's lies dominated local news cycles and social media, Jasper quietly began dismantling the financial empire she'd built with his support. The consulting business that had been hemorrhaging money for months suddenly found its line of credit revoked when Jasper, as the primary guarantor, withdrew his backing. The office lease that had been automatically renewed for 3 years was terminated when the property management company received notice that the guarantor was withdrawing support due to material changes in the underlying business relationship. Avery's business partner, Marcus Wheeler, called Jasper on Wednesday morning. "What the hell are you doing?" Marcus demanded without preamble. "I'm protecting my financial interests," Jasper replied calmly. "You're destroying Avery's livelihood." Avery destroyed Avery's livelihood when she decided to fabricate evidence of my infidelity rather than addressing the actual problems in our marriage. She's desperate, Jasper. People do stupid things when they're desperate. Yes, they do. And the people who enable them to do stupid things without consequences often find themselves caught in the crossfire. The silence on the line stretched for several seconds. "Are you threatening me?" Marcus asked finally. "I'm informing you that my financial support for ventures involving my wife has been withdrawn. What you do with that information is your choice." Marcus's voice took on a pleading tone. "Look, I know things got complicated between you two, but the business has nothing to do with your personal problems. Doesn't it?" Jasper leaned back in his chair, watching rain streak down his office window. "Tell me, Marcus, when did you first know about Harlan Voss?" The silence this time was longer and more telling. "I thought so," Jasper continued. "You knew she was having an affair, and you said nothing. You watched her lie to my face for months while I continued funding the business that you both depend on. So no, Marcus, this isn't about personal problems. This is about business relationships built on deception. Jasper, please. The consulting business will survive or it won't. That's no longer my concern. But it will do so without my financial backing." Jasper hung up and returned to his work, feeling nothing but the hollow satisfaction of another piece moved on the board. The final confrontation came on a rain-soaked Thursday evening at Marcello's, the Italian restaurant where they'd celebrated their second anniversary. Avery had requested the meeting through Elena, claiming she had something important to discuss. She was already seated when Jasper arrived, her auburn hair pulled back severely and her green eyes red-rimmed from what he assumed were tears or sleepless nights. She looked smaller somehow, diminished in ways that went beyond the weight she'd obviously lost. "Thank you for coming," she said as he sat across from her. You said it was important." She stared at her untouched wineglass for several seconds before speaking. "I know what you've been doing. I've been protecting myself from further fabricated accusations. You destroyed my business. I withdrew my financial support from a failing venture. There's a difference." Her hands shook as she reached for her glass. Marcus had to declare bankruptcy. 3 employees lost their jobs. "Consequences," Jasper said simply. "Is this what you wanted?" Her voice broke slightly. "To hurt innocent people just to get back at me?" Jasper studied the woman across from him, searching for any trace of the person he'd once loved. "You know what I wanted, Avery. I wanted my wife to come home and tell me she was having problems. I wanted her to say she was struggling with the business, that she felt overwhelmed, that she needed support. I wanted her to treat me like a partner instead of an obstacle. You couldn't trust me with the truth, but you could trust a stranger with your body. You couldn't confide in your husband about financial problems, but you could fabricate evidence to destroy his reputation. You couldn't ask for help, but you could orchestrate a character assassination campaign that involved our friends, our families, and the local media." Tears began flowing down her cheeks, but Jasper felt nothing. The woman crying across from him was a stranger wearing his wife's face. "I made mistakes," she whispered. "No," Jasper said quietly. You made choices. Hundreds of them. Every text message to Harlan was a choice. Every lie about working late was a choice. Every night you came home and kissed me knowing where you'd been was a choice. And fabricating evidence of my infidelity wasn't a mistake. It was psychological warfare. What do you want from me? Jasper signaled the waiter for his check. I want you to stop pretending that what you did was impulsive or accidental. I want you to own the fact that you systematically destroyed our marriage while simultaneously destroying my reputation to protect yourself from consequences. And then what? He stood, leaving money on the table. Then nothing. We're finished, Avery. Completely and permanently finished. Jasper, please. But he was already walking away, leaving her alone at the table where they'd once celebrated their future together. The phone call came at 2:17 a.m. on a Tuesday in November. Jasper woke to see Elena's name on the screen and for a moment considered letting it go to voicemail. But something about the hour made him answer. She's in the hospital, Elena said without preamble, her voice thick with tears. Jasper sat up in bed, suddenly alert. What happened? Pills. Valium and wine. The landlord found her when she didn't respond to eviction notices. The words hit him like a physical blow, but he remained quiet, processing the information with the same methodical approach he brought to everything else. Is she? She'll live. But Jasper, she's lost everything. The business, the apartment, her savings. Harlan disappeared completely after you destroyed his reputation. She has nothing left. Jasper stared out his bedroom window at the city lights, feeling something cold and final settle in his chest. What do you want me to say, Elena? I want you to remember that you loved her once. I did love her. I loved the woman I thought she was. But that woman never existed. She's broken, Jasper. Completely broken. So was I, he said quietly. The difference is, I didn't try to take anyone else down with me. Elena's voice turned sharp with anger. So this is it? You're satisfied now? Jasper considered the question seriously. Was he satisfied? The woman who'd systematically destroyed their marriage and then launched a campaign to destroy his reputation had lost everything. Her business was gone, her lover had abandoned her, her financial security had evaporated. She was alone in a hospital bed, facing a future with no safety net and no one to blame but herself. No, he said finally. I'm not satisfied. I'm not anything. I'm just finished. She still loves you. No, Elena. She loves what I represented. Security, stability, someone to clean up her messes. She never loved me. After Elena hung up, Jasper sat in his bed for a long time, staring at the darkness. He thought about the text message that had started everything, glowing on Avery's phone like a beacon in their bedroom. He thought about the 8 years of marriage that had revealed themselves to be built on foundations of sand. He thought about the methodical way he dismantled her life piece by piece, using the same analytical approach that had once built their shared future. And he felt nothing. The absence of feeling was perhaps the most devastating revelation of all. The woman lying in a hospital bed after a suicide attempt had once been the center of his universe, the person he'd planned to grow old with, the one he'd trusted with every secret and vulnerability. Now she was just another problem that had been solved, another equation balanced, another case closed. Jasper didn't visit the hospital. He didn't send flowers or make calls or check on her recovery. He simply continued with his life, the one he'd rebuilt from the ashes of their marriage. He moved into a larger apartment, took a promotion that required travel, began dating a forensic psychologist named Catherine who understood the importance of honesty in relationships. 6 months later, he received divorce papers in the mail. Avery had signed everything without contest, asking for nothing beyond her personal belongings and the right to walk away from the wreckage of their shared past. On the day the divorce was finalized, Jasper stood in his new apartment, looking out at a city that had witnessed the complete destruction of everything he'd once believed about love and trust and partnership. The methodical dismantling of Avery's life had been thorough and efficient, executed with the same precision he brought to his professional work. She had broken something in him that couldn't be repaired, and in response he had broken everything about her that mattered. It was, he supposed, a kind of justice. Not the healing kind that rebuilt relationships and restored trust, but the cold, mathematical kind that balanced equations and closed accounts. The woman who'd once laughed at his terrible jokes and cried during romantic movies was gone, replaced by someone who'd learned that actions carried consequences and that some betrayals were too complete to survive. And Jasper, standing alone in his apartment as evening fell over the city, realized that the same was true for him.